our effort coming together as a community was tested that day and the days subsequent to that, even though we were debilitated structurally, physically, but not morally. We kept it going, and we built back, I think, a better, stronger town.
20 years ago this month, Cordell faced one of its biggest disasters in modern-day history. On October 9, 2001, an F3 tornado tore through the northeastern part of town, leaving tons of destruction in its path. For many residents, such as then Cordell Mayor Phil Cleaver, that is a day that they will never forget.
We had about a third of our community was torn up, basically leveled, many parts of it. I can't remember exactly what day it was, but it was 5:05 because the courthouse clock stopped. And everybody knew for a while that was the time the tornado hit.
That day, according to the National Weather Service out of Norman, 19 tornadoes formed in Oklahoma. The tornado began south of Cordell near Glen English and Kiowa Street before becoming an F3 tornado near Crider Road and 9th Street and ultimately making its way out of town around 14th and Crider Road.
I was in my neighbor's shelter with my kids and wife and his kids and wife, and we looked up to the east. We knew something was up because we could hear there was kind of an eerie silence, but it was still sunny. But to the east were all this glistening. At a certain point, I looked at my neighbor friend. He said, that's building debris. And it was really high. It was up over the trees where we could see it.
While some, like Cleaver, took shelter but were out of the tornado's path, others were not so lucky. Former Cordell Elementary School principal Alan Hull was out looking at the clouds before being surprised to find out that the tornado would be going right over the house that he was in.
I was down at a local friend's shop when the storm sirens went off, and I hurried back to where my mother-in-law's house was, and then I went outside just cloud watching, and I won't ever do that again. And by the time I could hear the roar, there was very little time for anything but run in the house, and I jumped in a bathtub.
Hull's mother-in-law's home had been directly in the path of the tornado, though luckily Hull said that the tornado seemed to float above the home, having only taken off the roof of the structure.
I looked around and there was just a standard-sized bath mat. It was all I could cover up with, but I do remember thinking as I was in there that I'm 6'5", but I felt like I got most of that 6'5" underneath that little bitty bath mat. Then all of a sudden the roof came off the house, and it seemed like shortly after that I was looking up and there's blue skies, and it even seems like birds chirping. My mother-in-law was a tiny lady, and she said she was holding on to the interior doorknob on the inside of the closet, and it was trying to come open, but she didn't let go.
Though many residents would get to work as soon as the storm had passed, others had to get to work while the tornado tore through the town on its way out. So Nell Rainbow, editor of the Cordell Beacon at the time, went out to take photos of the tornado and the damage it caused after it was apparent that they were in no immediate danger.
As soon as it was clearly over, everybody pretty much scattered. The man who was working there at the Beacon at the time, he had grabbed one of the digital cameras, and I grabbed the other one, and we just began taking photos.
Once the storm had cleared and the tornado was on its way out of Cordell, residents were greeted with a devastating scene. According to a report done by NWS Norman, the Oklahoma State Emergency Management Office has said that approximately 477 single-family homes and 40 businesses were damaged, and 132 homes and 22 businesses were considered uninhabitable. Damage was estimated near $100 million, while 9 injuries and 0 fatalities were reported.
We were out trying to pick through what we could. Many of the areas you couldn't get through because electrical lines were down and power was not restored for a while. But Bob Lambert and I were combing through a lot of this along with the 2 chiefs. There wasn't much left of the southern part of town.
Upon exiting the destruction of his mother-in-law's home, Hull headed straight to the school to see what damage had been caused. He was greeted by a torn-up building with glass and debris everywhere.
Well, it was so much of a blessing that school was out. Between the auditorium and the elementary lobby, the windows were out, blown out, and it was like a war zone up and down the halls. Well, at that time, school storm procedure was to get next to an interior wall in the hall. That would have been disastrous.
For many, such as Rainbolt, this was the first time seeing a tornado impact their community.
I had seen tornado damage before, but it was always to somebody else's community. It wasn't to mine. You would see homes that were destroyed, and it would. I cried. Just a few days later, you would be driving east up there by the school, and you would realize that you kind of didn't know where you were because all your visual landmarks were gone.
Despite the extensive damage done to the town, Cleaver, Hull, and Rainbolt all agreed that Cordell's ability to come together and help out one another was an amazing sight to see.
Within just a few hours, we had relief trucks, we had the National Guard, we had FEMA, actually Oklahoma Emergency Management was calling. We had all kinds of local police departments and emergency responders combing through the area besides our police. It really showed a lot of partnership between the communities out here.
Cordell's ability to get to work, help each other out, and bounce back from the damage done left an impact on residents as well as those that were there to help, going so far as to be beyond the Cordell standard due to the way the town handled the situation according to Cleaver.
Even the people from the state that came out were so amazed at the response and the community support for relief, for rescue, for all the things that were part of the devastating event.
Rainbow echoed Cleaver's sentiments, saying she had witnessed residents immediately getting to work after the storm had passed.
It seemed like almost as if people knew what their job should be. And it wasn't like anyone had to be told what to do. They just knew that this is a job that needs to be done and I can do it, and they went and did it.
Cleaver had also said that the town had received an abundance of help from all around, so much so that some help had to even be turned away. An example of this being all the churches in town offering their facilities to the elementary school as their temporary schooling location.
It was an uplifting experience. I knew it was a nice, caring community, but the amount of outreach for the school from the citizens of Cordell, from the churches of Cordell, and I was offered my choice of all the church facilities. Nothing was ever said, but I felt like when I chose the facilities that had what we needed the best, that the ones who had offered, and I bypassed them because of something, they were disappointed. Like I had hurt their feelings because they wanted to help. And that's just typical small town Oklahoma. And I learned a great deal of respect for my old hometown because they really came through.
Though 20 years have passed, the effects caused by the tornado that day not only left some physical spots indicative of its damage here in town, but have also left many memories in the minds of those that experienced it firsthand.
I pay way closer attention to weather alerts now than I did prior to that.
One thing was collectively agreed upon amongst the people interviewed here. Cordell did an amazing job coming together as a community and building itself back up immediately after the destruction.
That I was never more proud to be a resident and citizen of Cordell than I was that day and the weeks that followed. The people in Cordell were and are the most amazing ever. Nobody complained. Everybody just dug in and did what they could do and helped where they were needed. Amazing bunch of people.
Looking to today and thinking on whether Cordell could come together like that once more, Cleaver said that he is hopeful that that would once again be the case.
Well, I certainly hope so. You know, the city leadership, which we had, I believe, not trying to sound braggadocious, but we had really good leaders. We had department heads that knew what they were doing. They responded to this quickly and effectively. So, yeah, I think it has to be tested. Unfortunately, you don't want to test it with one of these again, but there's always an event that tests the mettle of the community and the leadership of the community, and that certainly was our test.
To hear more about the tornado that damaged Cordell 20 years ago, or to see more photos from the day of the event, head on over to thecordellbeacon.com or pick up a copy of this week's newspaper.